I've had this video planned for a while, but I didn't know when I was going to film it or if there would be like a right time to film it and release it, but I guess you can call me an opportunist. So here I am, rising to the occasion, as you will, talking about spicy books. And if you don't know any of the recent drama surrounding spicy books, spicy book talk here on YouTube specifically, I'm so happy for you, and we're going to leave it at that. As a fantasy romance author that happens to write spicy scenes in their books, this topic kind of hit home, but also I want it to be a lot more educational than a drama piece. So we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive on what spicy books mean, because some people still don't know and they're not part of the reading community. So we'll talk about what it means, what it doesn't mean, and how we can have a respectful dialogue about them. Hi, I'm Lindsey Elizabeth, author of the Kingdoms of Keros series, which is 3 books in out of 4. If we're going through all the different genres that it is epic, dark, spicy, fantasy, romance. If that sounds like your thing, I will have them linked below, but let's get right into it and talk about spicy books. And I will put the timestamps below. So what are spicy books? In recent years, the term has kind of catapulted itself into the online reader and reviewer space. And spice is specifically referring to sensual scenes. I don't know what words I can say or not on YouTube, so bear with me while I use kind of the internet appropriate language so that I don't get like demonetized or something or banned, I don't know. So spice is adult content, essentially. And the way that the reading community and reviewing community talks about spice, it's a way to gauge how much intimate content is in the story. So just like when we're talking about food, spice can kind of range from like mild to burning your mouth or other regions. I went on a Hot Ones binge. This is unrelated to spicy books, but I binge watched like a whole bunch of episodes of Hot Ones. And let me tell you, I cannot handle food spice. So I was like sweating just watching people eat the spicy wings. Like, I'm not kidding. It literally would make my eyes water. It's just, I can't do actual spice. Spicy books, on the other hand, fun. But just like we all have different preferences and tolerances for heat in food, we also have that in books and in content. So there are some readers who might enjoy like a light sprinkling of spice, a single turn of a pepper grinder, if you will. And there are others that can do the reading equivalent of downing a jar of ghost peppers, which would make you sweat everywhere, probably. So in terms of romance and spice, there's also terms that people don't often know, or some people just getting into the reading community don't know. And those are things like fade to black, closed door, open door, those types of things. So we're going to kind of go through all of them really, probably not quickly, let's be real. If you're new to these terms, or you just like listening to me talk for some reason in my weird Wisconsin accent and try to tell jokes that are actually funny, thank you for sticking around. If you don't want to do that, timestamps, like I said, they're below. So when we get into the spice rating system, there is no one exact system that everybody is using because reading is subjective and spice levels are subjective. But having some sort of rating system kind of became popular, at least from my point of view, on TikTok, and then it kind of got adopted into other places. It might have just been other places anyway, but you'll see it pretty much everywhere: TikTok, RIP, Instagram, and YouTube. So you see it mostly on the internet, but it's really funny when your dad asks you if the next book you're writing is going to be very spicy, and you have to look him in the eye and say yes, because it's a Hades and Persephone retelling. Of course it's spicy, Dad. So creators who read and review and create content around books, typically when they're talking about like this spice meter, they use the chili pepper emoji because that makes sense. It's gender inclusive. And what else are we going to use besides water droplet emojis? Actually, I think that might be pushing it. We're not going to do that. Keep it with the peppers. So let's talk about the peppers. 1 pepper is kind of mild spice. We'll talk about that in a minute, what that might be. 2 peppers, obviously a moderate spice. It just goes up from there. 3 peppers, I think it's considered kind of like a moderately high spice. Like, there are scenes. There is spice. This is a spicy book. 4 is like, there's a lot of spice. Like, it's starting to get to the point where there's probably more spice than plot or character arcs, and it's just kind of for that reason. 5 would be like erotica. It's like all spice. You're downing some ghost peppers. You might be deep throating the ghost peppers. We don't know. So when we're talking about these spice levels, that's when we get into these other terms like closed door, open door, and fade to black. So we're going to start at the least spicy and work our way up. So fade to black scenes are really just kind of implied romantic scenes, like literally if you're watching a movie or a show, like the screen would just fade to black. Maybe they kiss and then it fades to black. Leaves it completely up to your imagination what happens next. Can you get out of here? I will say that this is more common in YA novels. I love you dearly. Fade to black scenes are typically found more in young adult novels or novels that just emphasize more on the emotional connection than the physical. But I do have a quick soapbox about this, so please bear with me. Because there is so much discourse in romance novels and young adult novels and adult novels, let's get this out of the way. Not all adult novels need to include spice to be considered adult novels. Spice is not a definitive marker for a novel or a book or a story to be adult. And usually when books are categorized by some type of age range or demographic in that sense, they're usually based on the themes surrounding the book and the characters. So adult books, while we may not be talking about taxes and the price of groceries and having a mental breakdown, they usually focus more on more complex character relationships or nuanced character development, things that are a lot more complicated than what you would experience as a teenager. And since the YA genre, young adult genre, is geared towards young adults aged literally like 12 to 18, think about the age range there and the things that are happening in those like 6 years. That is a wide range. There's so much development going on. There are so many first experiences, and that is usually what YA is geared towards. It's for those first experiences. And that doesn't necessarily mean explicit experiences. So they tackle a lot more emotionally resonant topics while doing so in a way that is digestible for a younger audience. So usually in young adult novels, there is no spice or very little spice, or it's fade to black, or maybe it's closed door, but very minimal spice. But one of the nuances with young adult is actually one of the largest reader demographics of young adult is adults. So it's worth noting that if you are an adult and you are expecting adult content when you go into a young adult novel, you might be disappointed. And I think when people start expecting that and expecting an easy reading level with spicy content, while there is that in adult fiction and adult romance, when you go into a young adult novel expecting spicy scenes, that is misunderstanding the purpose of the genre. So when you think about YA, think about the things you were experiencing as a teenager, and then if you're anything like I was as a teenager, make some room for Jesus because you weren't getting any. So expecting that spice in YA novels, to me, it feels really misplaced and misunderstood. And instead, if you're going to jump into a YA novel, you should be expecting more emotional character development, or more so like universal themes that kind of span across the ages. Okay, I'm off my first soapbox for this video. There will be another one because romance is such a nuanced topic in general, but I don't want this video to be like an hour long. So let's move on to some of the other romance genre terms. Next one, closed door. We had fade to black, where the screen fades to black and you don't really see anything. Closed door is one step up from that. It's maybe a 2 chili pepper if you're feeling generous. They're like fade to black, they're a little more detailed. Essentially it comes from the idea that the characters are like kissing and you go into a room and you close the door behind you. You as the reader, you're not invited into the room, so don't make it weird. That's closed door. That's closed door. You close the door, it's up to you what they do. The next, which is where we get into what people would categorize as a spicy book, is open door romance. Whether it's a spicy book or it's a book that has spicy scenes, doesn't seem to matter so much to the reading community. If it has spicy scenes, it's considered a spicy book. But open door is what happens when the author essentially says, okay, here's what's up. Buckle up, buttercup, strap in, strap on. I had to. It was low-hanging fruit. It was a little obvious. It was a little lazy, but at least the fictional men I write aren't. So open door leaves pretty much nothing to the imagination. It doesn't have to be super graphic, but it is... You're there. You're in the room. You might be filming it. I don't know what you like to do in the bedroom, but either you're experiencing it or you're just watching it happen. So these are found in adult romances or subgenres of romance, or just adult books that happen to have adults in them that do adult things, because sometimes as adults we do adult things. Hashtag adulting. Very cringy millennial of me. But like I said before, spice is subjective. It's kind of like art. It just depends on your experiences and your tastes. So what one reader might find tame, another reader might find burning hot. So when you're looking to get into reading a book and you want to make sure that it has like the right spice level that you're looking for, I would recommend looking at reviews, possibly looking at trigger warnings or content warnings if the author has them or the book has them anywhere. Usually they're in the first couple pages or on an author's website. But I think it's really helpful when you go into reading a book that you've seen like recommended maybe on your For You page or something, or whatever you're using on Instagram, Explore page or Reels or whatever. When you just keep seeing a book recommended over and over again, I think it's important not to go in blind because it might be like the totally wrong book for you, but the algorithm is just shoving it down your throat. And sometimes we don't want things shoved down our throat, right? Sometimes we like to be gentle. Okay. Look at reviews, look at trigger warnings, try to understand the context in which other readers are reading. So if you're seeing the same person recommending books that are too spicy for you, maybe try to interact with them less or unfollow them, or maybe just keep in mind that they're not the person that should be recommending you personally books, but you still like to follow them and like their content. Also, whenever it's possible, since we're on the topic of reading reviews, if you read an indie author's book, could you maybe leave them a review, especially an indie author? Size doesn't always matter, but when you're a smaller author, growth is important. My other soapbox I have is kind of nuanced about the romance genre in general, because there is a lot of stigma around it, and a lot of people like to say it's just corn. If you understand where I'm coming from with that word, thank you, because I'm not gonna say the real word and get like banned from YouTube. So a lot of people say that romance is just corn for women and you guys are corn addicts and all this stuff. To me, it's kind of like saying that ice cream is just milk and you're leaving out A, that's factually inaccurate, and B, you're leaving out an entire industry and a little bit of sweetness. And to the people that write books that have spice or spicy books or anything in that genre and nature, it's a little rude. I'm gonna be honest, a little rude. I don't see anyone out here calling Game of Thrones corn, do you? Sometimes. Sometimes you do. But it's more widely accepted because it was written by a man. So romance as a genre typically focuses a lot more on emotional connection, and sometimes when you have an emotional connection with somebody, you can have a physical connection. Fun fact, as an adult. But it focuses a lot more on emotional connection, vulnerability, and also just arcs of personal growth and character development. It's not all just, well, sometimes, but we're talking about romance, and a subset of romance is erotica. Can I say that on YouTube? We're talking about romance as a whole, and romance as a whole focuses more on emotional connection, character development, character arcs. It will usually have more plot than erotica will, and this is not to dismiss erotica as a genre either, but romance as a whole. There are elements both in the writing and in the industry that set it apart from the corn industry. And romance novels have been under fire for decades. Meanwhile, they are also one of the top-selling genres, if not the top-selling genre, for like 200 years. Essentially, since romance novels have been written, people have been reading and buying romance novels. A lot of people who criticize them say that it's shameful and try to kind of put themselves on a pedestal by punching down. So I think a lot of this criticism about the romance genre comes from a place of both internal and external misogyny, because as a genre, it pretty unapologetically focuses on pleasure and is especially geared towards women. It gives women agency and it gives them an expectation that I think a lot of people see as unrealistic. So when people call them corn, it stigmatizes the genre as a whole, and it simultaneously diminishes the value of those who read and enjoy it. So keeping that in mind, that there are people who enjoy things that you might not enjoy, it's crucial to remember that if you are in a book community, if you're in the book space, if you're in a reviewing space, it's very important to remember not to judge somebody based on what they read. Because every reader will have a different connection to a different type of story, a different subgenre, a different spice level. And it's all subjective on personal experiences, on tastes, on where you are mentally and physically. And it could possibly even depend on your relationships with the people around you and what they think of the things that you are consuming. So everybody has different perspectives, everybody has different opinions. And while it's perfectly acceptable to say things that you hate about a book. First off, don't tag the author if you do that. Second off, you can do that until the world ends. You can say every single thing you hated about any book you want, but don't drag down the people that enjoy that book. It is not anyone's place to pass judgment on what other people are reading and consuming unless it is actively harming people. For some people, they like dark romance, which is different than dark fantasy or dark fantasy romance. Dark romance explores a lot of themes that a lot of people find very uncomfortable, but some people actually take comfort in them because it's a safe way to experience those things and know that it's not happening to you in real life. For other people, we like just a steamy scene here and there. It's fun. It's exciting. Just kind of breaks up the monotony of like having a full-fledged, crazy, intricate plot line going on. And the reason I write spice into my books is because I think that it builds on the emotional connection of the characters who are learning to trust each other. And it takes a lot of trust to have a spicy scene with somebody, usually in my experience. But it's just important to remember that not everybody has the same taste, not everybody can handle the same spice level, to do your due diligence, do your research, read your trigger warnings. We can have a whole conversation about trigger warnings if you want to. As an author that includes trigger warnings, let me know if you want that, but be respectful about it. But having this kind of approach where we're just criticizing the book and not the people who enjoy the book or the story or the TV or whatever type of content media you're consuming, when we only criticize the thing and not the people who love the thing, it fosters a really great sense of community, and it doesn't put shame on people for simply enjoying things of a human nature. So, I don't have a whole lot of a conclusion, but that was me stepping off my soapbox and saying that this was probably a pretty long video, so I'm just going to leave it at that, and let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts on spicy books. I don't know, maybe check out mine if you like spicy fantasy romance books, but I will see you in the next video. Bye.